David's face went white as paper. His hands shook as he read the message again. Maya watched her husband, the man who'd never shown fear in boardrooms full of sharks, looked genuinely terrified for the first time in their marriage. Maya's knees nearly buckled. 18 months in county jail hadn't prepared her for federal agents in her living room. What's this about? Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. She had counted every hour in that cold Virginia jail, convinced her wealthy husband had abandoned her to face charges she swore were never hers. But when she walked through their mansion door a day early, she found him waiting like a stranger with murder in his eyes. Maya Chen stepped out of the county transport van into the humid Richmond air, her hands trembling as she signed the final release papers. 18 months. 18 months of concrete walls and metal bars for crimes she never committed. The fraud charges had destroyed everything. Her reputation, her community standing, her marriage to tech billionaire David Chun. Or so she thought. The Uber ride to their suburban mansion felt like traveling through someone else's life. Manicured lawns, luxury cars, houses that cost more than most people made in a decade. This used to be her world too, back when David looked at her like she hung the moon instead of like she'd stolen it. She pushed open the front door with the key she'd kept clutched in her palm for 547 days. The marble foyer stretched before her, cold and perfect as a museum. But something was wrong. The house hummed with tension, like storm clouds gathering overhead. David, her voice echoed off walls that had once heard their laughter. In here, his voice came from the living room, flat as roadkill. Maya's stomach dropped. He wasn't supposed to be home. Hell, she wasn't supposed to be home either. Her release date was tomorrow. But good behavior and overcrowding had bought her freedom a day early. She found him sitting in his leather chair, still wearing that navy Tom Ford suit that used to make her weak in the knees. Now he looked like a judge ready to deliver a death sentence. His green eyes, the same ones that used to devour her across crowded rooms, held nothing but ice. Surprise, she whispered, trying for a smile that died on her lips. David didn't move, didn't smile, didn't even acknowledge that she'd spoken. Instead, he reached for a manila envelope on the coffee table and slid out a stack of photographs. You ruined me, he said, voice steady as a funeral director's. The board votes me out tomorrow. The photos scattered across the glass table like evidence at a crime scene. Maya's heart stopped. There she was, or someone who looked exactly like her, walking out a cheap motel with a man she'd never seen before. Another photo showed them entering together. A third caught them in what looked like an intimate embrace by a car. That's not me. The words came out strangled, desperate. Really, David's laugh was sharp enough to cut glass. Because that's definitely your face, your body, your wedding ring. Maya grabbed the photos with shaking hands. The woman looked exactly like her. Same height, same build, same dark skin, even the same natural hair texture. But something felt wrong. The posture was too confident. The walk too practiced. The smile too knowing. Have you ever walked into your own home and felt like an intruder? Like the life you'd built was suddenly foreign territory? That's exactly what Maya felt as she stared at evidence of crime she never committed. David, I swear on my mother's grave. Don't. His voice cracked like a whip. Don't you dare bring your mother into this. She raised you better than this. Maya studied the timestamps on the photos. Her blood ran cold. These are dated 3 weeks ago. And I was in county jail 3 weeks ago. I've been locked up for over a year, David. How could I be in some motel when I was behind bars? For the first time since she'd entered the room, uncertainty flickered in his eyes. David had built his empire on details, on facts, on evidence that couldn't lie. And the math wasn't adding up. Before either of them could speak, David's phone buzzed. A text message lit up the screen. Maya caught just enough to freeze her soul. She wasn't supposed to be out until tomorrow. Handle it. If the person you trusted most stood there like a stranger, would you run or demand answers? Drop your thoughts in the comments right now. David's face went white as paper. His hands shook as he read the message again. Maya watched her husband, the man who'd never shown fear in boardrooms full of sharks, looked genuinely terrified for the first time in their marriage. "Who sent that?" she whispered. But before David could answer, the front door burst open. Three men in dark suits entered without knocking, without invitation, moving through their home like they owned it. "Mr. Chun," the lead man said quietly, his voice carrying the kind of authority that doesn't need to be loud. "We need to talk. Now." Power in America isn't just about money. It's about who controls the story, and someone just rewrote theirs without permission. The three men stood in their living room like funeral directors come to collect a body. David rose slowly from his chair, every muscle in his body coiled tight as a spring. Maya had seen him handle hostile takeover attempts, navigate Senate hearings, stare down Fortune 500 CEOs. But these men made him look like a kid caught cheating on a test. "Gentlemen," David said, his CEO voice steady but strained. "This is my wife. Whatever we need to discuss." "Can wait," the lead man finished. His eyes flicked to Maya with professional disinterest. "Mrs. Chun, congratulations on your early release. I'm Agent Morrison, FBI. We'll need to speak with both of you, but separately." Maya's knees nearly buckled. 18 months in county jail hadn't prepared her for federal agents in her living room. "What's this about?" "Corporate fraud. International money laundering. Wire fraud across state lines." Morrison's voice was flat as concrete. "Your husband's company is under federal investigation." The room spun around Maya like a carnival ride gone wrong. David's tech empire, the one that had lifted her from serving coffee at a Waffle House in Atlanta to living in a mansion in Richmond, was crumbling while she'd been locked away. But as the shock faded, pieces started clicking together. She thought back to their beginning, when none of this madness existed. 2 years ago, she'd been working double shifts at that diner, sending every spare dollar to her mama's medical bills. The North Carolina Tech Conference had been her one shot, a networking event where small business owners could pitch ideas to investors. She'd saved for 6 months just to afford the conference fee. David Chun had been the keynote speaker. Billionaire, tech mogul, 34 years old, Connecticut old money mixed with Silicon Valley innovation. She'd watched him from the cheap seats, never dreaming they'd even share the same air. But fate had other plans. The coffee station had run out of cream right as he'd walked up. Maya had been refilling the dispensers. Old habits die hard. When he'd smiled and said, "You don't work for the hotel, do you?" "How'd you know?" she'd asked, suddenly conscious of her thrift store blazer next to his designer everything. "Because you're the only person here who actually knows how to make decent coffee." That smile had been her undoing. Not because he was rich or powerful, but because he'd looked at her like she mattered. Like her hustle was impressive instead of shameful. Like her dreams were worth hearing. Have you ever fallen for someone completely wrong for you on paper, but perfect in reality? Drop a heart if you know that feeling. Their first night together had been electric. His penthouse suite, city lights stretching to the horizon. But all Maya could focus on was the way he touched her like she was precious. The way he listened when she talked about growing up poor, about her mama's cancer, about wanting to build something lasting. "You're not like other women I've dated," he'd whispered against her neck. "You mean I'm not rich and white?" she'd challenged. "I mean you're real." Now, watching federal agents treat their home like a crime scene, Maya wondered if any of it had been real, or if she'd been the perfect cover story for whatever mess David had gotten himself into. Agent Morrison's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and frowned. "Mrs. Chun," he said, "we just received some interesting information. The motel you allegedly visited 3 weeks ago, it burned down 3 days after these photos were taken. Someone really wanted to cover their tracks." The truth was starting to surface, but Maya had a sinking feeling it was going to get much worse before it got better. Nothing destroys evidence quite like fire, except the truth has a way of surviving even the hottest flames. The burned-out shell of the Sunset Motel looked like something from a nightmare. Yellow police tape fluttered in the Virginia wind, and the acrid smell of smoke still clung to the air 3 weeks later. Maya stood beside Agent Morrison's car, staring at the blackened remains of the building where she'd supposedly committed adultery. "Convenient timing," Morrison observed, adjusting his sunglasses. "Fire department ruled it electrical, but the timing raises questions. Maya wrapped her arms around herself, even though the afternoon sun beat down mercilessly. I told you, I was in county jail when those photos were taken. I can prove it. We're checking your alibi, Morrison replied. But someone went to a lot of trouble to make sure this evidence disappeared. David stood several feet away, phone pressed to his ear, probably dealing with another corporate crisis. Since the FBI had shown up yesterday, his world had been crashing down in real time. Stock prices plummeting, board members demanding explanations, media vultures circling like they smell blood. But Maya's mind was elsewhere, trying to piece together fragments of memory. The day those photos were allegedly taken, she remembered it clearly because it had been visiting day at the jail. Mama had driven up from Atlanta, bringing homemade cookies and updates from the old neighborhood. Agent Morrison, Maya turned away from the ruins. I need to make a phone call. 20 minutes later, Maya's mama was on speakerphone, her voice crackling through the FBI field office's conference room. Baby, of course I remember that day. Third Thursday of last month. I drove 4 hours to see you, sat in that awful visiting room for 2 hours. You were so worried about the legal bills. Morrison leaned forward. Mrs. Washington, what time were you there? Arrived at 1 p.m., left around 3:30. Had to be back in Atlanta by evening for my dialysis appointment. Got the medical records to prove it if you need them. Maya felt tears prick her eyes. Mama's kidney disease had gotten worse while she'd been locked up, but the woman had still driven 8 hours round trip just to hold her daughter's hand for 2 hours. Morrison made notes. That puts Mrs. Chun in county jail exactly when these photos show her at the motel. Either she can teleport, or someone's playing games. David finally looked up from his phone. For the first time since Maya had come home, she saw something other than anger in his eyes. Doubt, maybe even hope. When was the last time someone's simple touch left you breathless? Because despite everything, the accusations, the federal investigation, the photos that made no sense, when David's hand brushed hers as they examined the evidence, electricity still shot through her veins like live wire. There's more, Morrison continued, pulling out a tablet. Security footage from the gas station across from the motel. The video quality was grainy, but clear enough. A woman who looked exactly like Maya walked across the parking lot with confident strides, her head held high, moving with the kind of practiced grace that Maya had never possessed. Growing up poor doesn't teach you to walk like you own the world. It teaches you to make yourself invisible. That's not me, Maya whispered, studying the screen. David leaned closer, and she caught a whiff of his cologne, the same scent that used to drive her crazy during late-night strategy sessions in his home office. The walk is wrong, he said quietly. Maya doesn't move like that. She's more careful, observant. It was the first time he'd said her name without venom since she'd walked through the front door. Have you ever discovered someone was jealous enough to destroy your life? Share your story below. Sometimes the truth is stranger than fiction. Morrison paused the video. We're dealing with a professional here. Someone who studied your mannerisms, your appearance, even got access to your personal items for photos. This isn't random. This is personal. Maya's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Stop digging or your mother's next. Her blood turned to ice water. Whoever was behind this had just made their biggest mistake. They'd threatened the one person Maya would die to protect. The investigator slid a file across his desk. Bank records showing payments to a theatrical consultant traced back to Chun Industries' biggest competitor. But the signature authorizing the payments made them both freeze. It belonged to someone who was supposed to be in Europe, someone from David's past who'd never forgiven being replaced. She stared at her own face, committing crimes she never committed, and realized someone had been studying her long enough to become her. The signature on the bank authorization form belonged to Catherine Williams, David's ex-fiancée, Harvard Law graduate, Connecticut royalty who'd been traveling in Europe for the past 6 months. Maya stared at the elegant handwriting that had once signed Christmas cards addressed to David and his lovely wife, with the kind of passive aggression that money taught you to perfect. Catherine's been funding this. David's voice cracked like thin ice. That's impossible. She's in Switzerland, running her family's foundation. Agent Morrison pulled up airline records on his tablet. According to TSA, Catherine Williams has been in and out of the country 6 times in the past 4 months. She was definitely stateside when your wife was supposedly at that motel. Maya remembered Catherine from their wedding, tall, blonde, beautiful in that effortless way that came from generations of good breeding and better nutrition. She'd congratulated them with a smile sharp enough to cut diamonds, then disappeared from their lives entirely. Or so they'd thought. Why would she do this? Maya asked, though part of her already knew. Hell hath no fury like a rich white woman replaced by a poor black one. The private investigator Morrison had recommended worked out of an office that looked like something from an old detective movie. Dusty blinds carved afternoon sunlight into sharp slices across worn leather chairs and filing cabinets that had seen too many secrets. Jack Sullivan had been digging into corporate espionage for 20 years, and his weathered face showed every sleepless night. "Your Catherine's good," Sullivan admitted, spreading photos across his desk. "Professional actress, headshots, theatrical training, the works. She hired someone to study you for months. Social media posts, security footage from places you frequented, even interviews with people who knew you." Maya's stomach turned. "Someone's been watching me for months?" "Longer. We found payments going back 8 months, right around when your husband's company's stock hit record highs." David's jaw clenched. The same time she started calling about rekindling our friendship and wanting to discuss business opportunities. Sullivan flipped through more documents. "She used your mannerisms, your speech patterns, even got access to your medical records to find someone with your exact measurements. The woman in those photos isn't just an actress. She's your doppelganger. Ever had an ex try to sabotage your happiness? How did you handle someone who couldn't let go? Tell me in the comments." The evidence was overwhelming. Catherine had spent hundreds of thousands of dollars creating the perfect frame job, hiring an actress, planting evidence, buying off witnesses, even arranging the convenient motel fire, all to destroy Maya's marriage and David's company simultaneously. But why the corporate sabotage? Maya asked. If she wanted David back, why destroy his business? Sullivan's smile was grim. Because she never wanted him back. She wanted him destroyed. Check this out. Catherine's family company has been positioning itself to buy Chun Industries assets once the stock price crashes. This isn't about love, Mrs. Chun. This is about revenge with a profit margin. Maya felt David's hand find hers under the table. His fingers were warm, familiar, and for a moment she remembered what it felt like when he used a tracer palm while they watched movies, back when their biggest worry was whether to order Chinese or pizza. The investigator slid a final file across his desk. Bank records showing payments to a theatrical consultant traced back to Chun Industries' biggest competitor. But the signature authorizing the payments made them both freeze. It was Catherine's, and she was supposed to be in Europe. But as they left Sullivan's office, Maya's phone buzzed with a message that changed everything. Enjoyed the investigator visit? Check your house security feed. Some surprises don't wait for invitations. Catherine wasn't just one step ahead. She'd been watching them in real time. His past came calling with an Hermes handbag and a Harvard law degree, proving that privilege can be the most dangerous weapon of all. Maya's blood froze as she opened the security app on her phone. There, clear as day on their home surveillance feed, was Catherine Williams standing in their living room like she owned it. Designer heels clicked against marble floors as she moved through their space with casual familiarity, touching picture frames, adjusting throw pillows, making herself at home. "She's in our house," Maya whispered, showing David the screen. David's face went sheet white. "That's impossible. She doesn't have the codes." "She had them when we were engaged." Catherine's voice came from behind them, smooth as expensive whiskey. They spun around to find her standing on the sidewalk, looking like she'd stepped off the pages of Vogue. Blonde hair, perfectly styled, cream-colored suit that probably cost more than Maya's entire wardrobe, and a smile that could have frozen hell itself. "Hello, David." "Maya." Catherine's green eyes swept over Maya like she was appraising livestock. "Congratulations on your early release. Prison orange never was your color." Maya's hands clenched into fists. 18 months of anger, frustration, and humiliation boiled over. You psychotic. Careful, Catherine interrupted, pulling out her phone. Assault charges would be such a shame, especially with your record. David stepped between them, his body tense as a coiled spring. What do you want, Catherine? Justice. Catherine's smile widened. You chose her over me. You threw away everything we built together for what? A waitress from Atlanta? A woman who couldn't even stay out of jail. She was framed, David said through gritted teeth. Was she? Catherine tilted her head like a predator studying prey. Because I have security footage from your house. Cameras you didn't know I'd installed during our engagement. Would you like to see what your wife was really doing during those late board meetings? Maya felt the ground shift under her feet. You've been watching us? For months, darling. You'd be amazed what people do when they think they're alone. Catherine pulled a tablet from her designer bag. This footage shows you entering and leaving the house at very specific times. Times that coincidentally match when certain corporate documents were accessed. Have you ever had an ex try to sabotage your happiness? How'd you handle someone who couldn't let go? Tell me in the comments. David grabbed the tablet, his face growing darker with each swipe. Maya caught glimpses of herself on screen, entering the house after visiting her mother, leaving for grocery runs, completely normal activities made to look suspicious by Catherine's twisted narrative. You're sick, Maya breathed. I'm fero. Catherine's voice never lost its cultured pleasantness. Did you know your husband increased your life insurance policy by $2 million right before your arrest? Fascinating timing, don't you think? Maya's world tilted. She stared at David, searching his face for denial, for explanation, for anything that made sense. But he wouldn't meet her eyes. David, her voice came out smaller than she intended. I can explain. Oh, this gets better, Catherine continued, clearly enjoying every second of their pain. The fraud documents you supposedly signed? They were created using a signature template from your charity work. Such a clever forgery that even experts couldn't tell the difference. Someone with intimate access to your personal documents would need to. Enough. David's roar echoed off the buildings around them. You want to destroy me? Fine, but leave her out of this. Catherine's laugh was music box pretty and twice as cold. Oh, David, you still don't understand. She was never the target. She was the weapon. Every move she made, every choice she thought she was making freely, was all part of the plan. Maya felt like she was drowning in quicksand. What are you talking about? Catherine's smile turned victorious as she handed over a manila envelope. Security footage from your house, she said sweetly, from cameras you didn't know I'd installed. Would you like to see what your wife was really doing while you were at those late board meetings? But as Maya reached for the photos to examine the timestamps, something caught her eye that made her blood run cold. The date on the security footage showed her entering their home the night the fraud documents were allegedly signed. She'd been visiting her sick mother in Atlanta that entire weekend. The proof of her innocence was hidden in Catherine's own evidence. Every marriage has secrets, but they're being broadcast on hidden cameras by a woman who knew exactly where to look. Maya's hand shook as she stared at the timestamp on Catherine's security footage. July 15th, 8:47 p.m., the exact night the fraud documents were supposedly signed in their home office. But Maya hadn't been home that night. She'd been 4 hours away in Atlanta, holding her mama's hand through another round of chemo. This proves I'm innocent, Maya whispered, pointing at the screen. Catherine's smile faltered for just a second. Does it? Or does it prove you're cleverer than we thought? I was in Atlanta that weekend, Maya said, her voice growing stronger. At Grady Memorial Hospital. There are medical records, parking receipts, witness statements. Convenient, Catherine cut her off. But this footage shows you in your husband's office, accessing his computer, handling confidential documents. David grabbed the tablet, studying the video with the focus that had built his empire. Maya watched his face change as he processed what he was seeing. The woman on screen moved through their house like she belonged there, but something was off. That's not Maya, David said quietly. Catherine's perfectly manicured eyebrow arched. Excuse me, the way she moves. Maya always checks the locks twice before going upstairs. She turns off lights as she goes. This woman just walks straight through like she owns the place. Maya's heart hammered against her ribs. After months of David looking at her like a stranger, he was finally seeing what she'd been trying to tell him. Plus, David continued, Maya uses her left hand for everything. This woman's signing documents with her right. Have you ever discovered someone was watching your most private moments? Share your thoughts below. Catherine's composure cracked slightly. You're grasping at straws. Am I? David pulled out his own phone, scrolling through photos. Here's Maya at the hospital that night. Time stamped 8:52 p.m. 5 minutes after your footage shows her supposedly in our house. The photo showed Maya in the hospital cafeteria, exhaustion written across her face, still wearing the same clothes from 3 days earlier. Her mama lay in the background, hooked up to machines that beeped steadily. Maya felt tears burn her eyes, not from sadness, but from relief. David had kept photos of her even when he thought she'd betrayed him, even when he'd had every reason to hate her. Catherine's mask slipped completely. That proves nothing. Photos can be doctored. Not medical records, Maya interrupted, pulling out her phone. Not hospital security footage. Not parking garage timestamps. Not the 3 nurses who remember me sleeping in that chair for 4 nights straight. But Catherine wasn't done. Speaking of sleeping arrangements, she said, her voice turning venomous. Did you know your husband installed cameras in your bedroom too? Would you like to see what happens when you think you're alone? Maya's stomach dropped. Their bedroom, their sanctuary, had been violated by this psychopath's voyeuristic games. Every intimate moment, every vulnerable conversation, every night they'd held each other through the storm of accusations and legal bills. You're sick, Maya breathed. I'm thorough, Catherine replied, and patient, and very, very good at getting what I want. David stepped closer to Maya, his body radiating protective fury. What you want is to destroy us. But you just proved Maya's innocent. Did I? Catherine's smile returned, cold as winter morning. Because those bedroom cameras caught something very interesting. Conversations about offshore accounts. Plans to disappear if things got too hot. Late-night phone calls to numbers that trace back to some very unsavory characters. Maya felt the world spinning again. That's impossible. Is it? Or have you been playing a much longer game than anyone realized? Catherine pulled out another device, and Maya's own voice filled the air. We need to move the money before they find it. The Cayman account is already set up. But Maya had never said those words, had never even thought them. As they watched the surveillance footage, something caught Maya's eye, a timestamp showing her entering their home the night the fraud documents were allegedly signed. But she was visiting her sick mother in Atlanta that weekend. The proof of her innocence was hidden in Catherine's own evidence, but now Catherine was using deepfake technology to create conversations that never happened. The war was about to get much dirtier. Sometimes the strongest alibis come from the people who raised us. And sometimes those people are dying while we fight for our lives. The drive to Atlanta felt like traveling back in time. Maya pressed her face against the passenger window, watching Virginia's rolling hills give way to Georgia's red clay and pine forests. David hadn't spoken much since they'd left Catherine standing on that Richmond sidewalk, but his knuckles were white on the steering wheel. You believe me now? Maya asked quietly. David glanced at her, and for the first time in months, she saw the man she'd fallen in love with. I should have believed you from the beginning. You had evidence. I had lies dressed up as evidence. His voice was rough with emotion. I know you, Maya. I know your heart. I should have trusted that instead of some photos. Grady Memorial Hospital's ICU hummed with machines, keeping hope alive. Maya's mama lay in bed 314. Surrounded by flowers from a community that remembered when she was just that girl who served their coffee with dreams bigger than the diner. Mama's eyes lit up when Maya walked through the door. There's my baby girl. How's married life treating you? Maya forced a smile. Mama didn't know about the arrest, the trial, the jail time. Maya had convinced everyone to keep it quiet, not wanting to burden a dying woman with her daughter's troubles. It's complicated, Mama. Honey, love is always complicated when it's real. Mama's voice was weak, but her grip was still strong when she took Maya's hand. That's how you know it's worth fighting for. David stepped forward, and Mama's face brightened. David, look at you, still handsome as the day you stole my daughter's heart. Mrs. Washington, David said, bending to kiss her forehead. How are you feeling? Like I've been hit by a truck, but the truck was driven by angels. Mama's laugh turned into a cough. Sit down, both of you. Tell me what's really going on. Maya exchanged glances with David. What do you mean? Child, I've been sick, not blind. You've got worry lines deeper than the Grand Canyon, and your husband looks like he's been wrestling demons. Mama's eyes narrowed. Someone's been asking questions about you. Maya's blood turned to ice. What kind of questions? White woman, pretty as a picture, expensive clothes. Came by here about 3 months ago, claiming to be from some charity organization. Wanted to know about your schedule, your habits when you visited. Mama coughed again. I didn't like her energy, so I didn't tell her much. What would your mother tell you about fighting people who have more money but less heart? Share her wisdom below. David leaned forward. What exactly did she ask? Wanted to know what days you visited, how long you stayed, if you ever came alone or with someone. Asked about your childhood, your friends from the old neighborhood. Mama's expression darkened. Then she started asking about money. If you'd ever mentioned having financial problems, if you'd ever talked about needing cash quick. Maya felt sick. Catherine had been planning this for months, studying her like a lab rat. Did you tell her anything? Maya asked. Told her my daughter was raised right and never asked for handouts from nobody. Mama's voice carried the steel that had gotten her through 40 years of double shifts and single motherhood. But honey, I should have warned you. I just didn't think. Maya squeezed her mother's hand. You couldn't have known. But Mama wasn't finished. There's something else. That woman, she left me her card. Said if I ever needed anything, medical bills, treatments the insurance wouldn't cover, I should call her. David went very still. Do you still have the card? Mama reached into her bedside drawer and pulled out an elegant business card. Catherine Williams, Williams Foundation, with a handwritten note on the back. For Maya's family, when the time comes. She knew, Maya whispered. She knew you were sick. She was going to use your medical bills against me. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Catherine had been planning to force Maya into desperate choices, to make her vulnerable to blackmail or worse. But Maya's arrest had disrupted the timeline, so Catherine had moved to Plan B, destroy her marriage and frame her for crimes she didn't commit. Maya's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Enjoying family time? Check your husband's Swiss account. Some gifts take time to open. Mama's frail hand gripped hers with surprising strength. Baby, she whispered, that white girl came to see me 3 months ago, asking questions about you. She wanted to know your habits, your schedule. I should have warned you, but I didn't think. The beeping monitors seemed louder as the truth crystallized. Catherine hadn't just been watching. She'd been preparing for war from multiple angles. And Maya's early release had caught her completely off guard. Catherine's revenge wasn't born in a moment of fury. It was crafted over months with the precision of a surgeon and the patience of a predator. The Swiss banking investigator's office overlooked Lake Geneva, but the view couldn't clean the dirty money Catherine had moved through accounts bearing their stolen identities. Maya sat across from Detective Laurent Dubois, her head spinning from revelations that kept getting worse. Mrs. Chun, Dubois said in accented English, your husband's signature appears on documents authorizing transfers of $12 million to numbered accounts in Geneva, Nassau, and the Cayman Islands. David's face was stone cold. Those are my signatures. The handwriting analysis suggests otherwise. Dubois slid forensic reports across the mahogany table. But here's what's interesting, the timing. These transfers began 8 months ago, exactly when your stock prices started climbing to record highs. Maya studied the documents, her mind racing. 8 months ago was when Catherine started calling about business opportunities. And when she started visiting your mother in Atlanta, David added grimly. Dubois raised an eyebrow. There's more. The accounts were opened using personal information that would only be available to someone with intimate knowledge of your lives. Social security numbers, mother's maiden names, childhood addresses, details that appear in background checks for security clearances. Catherine had access to David's files when they were engaged, Maya said. His company does government contracts. She would have seen everything. The detective nodded. But she needed current information too. Banking passwords, updated signatures, recent financial statements. Someone was feeding her real-time intelligence. David's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and his face went white. There's been a break-in at our house. Richmond PD is on scene. Have you ever had to fight someone who planned your destruction while smiling in your face? How did you survive it? The flight back to Virginia felt eternal. Maya pressed her face against the airplane window, watching clouds roll past like cotton balls, her mind churning with possibilities. Catherine was always 3 steps ahead, anticipating their moves before they made them. But she made one critical mistake. She'd underestimated Maya's survival instincts. Growing up poor in Atlanta had taught Maya to recognize predators. The difference between someone who wanted to help and someone who wanted to use you. Catherine might have money and connections, but Maya had something more valuable. Street smarts forged in the fires of real struggle. Their Richmond mansion looked like a crime scene when they arrived. Police cars lined the driveway, their red and blue lights painting the afternoon in emergency colors. Detective Sarah Martinez met them at the front door, her expression grim. Nothing was stolen, Martinez explained, but your home office was ransacked. Files scattered everywhere, computer hard drives missing. Maya and David surveyed the destruction. Their elegant home office looked like a tornado had hit it. Financial documents littered the floor. Family photos lay broken on the carpet, and David's computer setup was completely destroyed. She's covering her tracks, David said quietly. Or planting new evidence, Maya countered. Catherine's too smart to just destroy things. She's replacing them with something worse. Detective Martinez held up evidence bags. We found these hidden in your desk drawer. Offshore banking information, encrypted hard drives, and what appears to be blackmail material on several government officials. Maya's stomach dropped. We've never seen any of that before. The timing's interesting too, Martinez continued. Your security system shows the break-in happened exactly 30 minutes after your plane took off for Switzerland. Someone was monitoring your travel. David pulled Maya close, and she felt his heart hammering against her ribs. She's not just trying to frame us, he whispered. She's trying to make us fugitives. But as they stood in the wreckage of their violated home, Maya's phone lit up with a message that changed everything. Check the basement safe. Some secrets can't stay buried forever. They didn't have a basement safe. Someone had been in their house longer than anyone realized. She signed her name to help sick children, and someone used that kindness to forge her signature on documents that nearly destroyed her life. The basement door that shouldn't have existed stood open like a mouth waiting to swallow them whole. Maya stared down wooden steps that descended into darkness beneath their Richmond mansion. In 3 years of marriage, she'd never known this space existed. David, her voice came out smaller than intended. I have no idea, he replied, but his hand found hers as they followed Detective Martinez down the steps. The basement had been converted into a surveillance command center. Multiple monitors lined the walls, showing feeds from cameras throughout their house. Filing cabinets stood like sentinels in the corners, filled with documents that made Maya's skin crawl. Jesus Christ, Martinez breathed, shining her flashlight across the setup. How long has this been here? David examined the equipment with the technical eye that had built his empire. This is professional grade, military-level surveillance. Someone spent serious money on this. Maya opened one of the filing cabinets and nearly vomited. Photos of her covered the walls, at the grocery store, visiting her mother, walking to work back in Atlanta, even sleeping in their bed. Someone had been watching her for over a year. Look at this, Martinez called from across the room. She held up a folder labeled Project Replacement in Catherine's elegant handwriting. The contents were nauseating. Detailed psychological profiles, behavioral analysis, even medical records from Maya's doctor visits. But the worst part was the timeline. It went back 14 months, long before Maya's arrest, long before any of the fraud allegations. She's been planning this since before we even got married, Maya whispered. David's face was granite as he read Catherine's notes. Listen to this. Subject responds well to emotional manipulation regarding mother's health. Financial pressure through medical bills could provide leverage for future operations. Ever had your good deeds twisted against you? Share how you dealt with someone using your kindness as a weapon. Maya sank into a chair, the weight of Catherine's obsession crushing down on her. She was going to use Mama's cancer to blackmail me. It gets worse, Martinez said, holding up another file. Insurance fraud, medical billing fraud, signature forgery on charity documents. She had backup plans for backup plans. The charity connection hit Maya like a physical blow. 6 months ago, she'd attended a gala for children's cancer research. Catherine had been there, all smiles and air kisses, praising Maya for her commitment to helping those less fortunate. Maya had signed dozens of documents that night. Donation pledges, volunteer agreements, publicity releases. She'd been so proud to help, never imagining her signatures were being harvested for future crimes. The forensics will show the fraud documents were created using signatures from that gala, David said, his voice hollow with realization. But we can prove the timeline now, Maya said, hope creeping into her voice. The charity has security footage, guest lists, witness statements. Her phone rang, cutting through the basement's oppressive silence. Unknown number. Mrs. Chun. The voice was professional, emotionless. This is Dr. Patterson from Grady Memorial. You need to get to Atlanta immediately. Your mother's been in an accident. Maya's world tilted on its axis. What kind of accident? Hit and run in the hospital parking lot. She's in surgery now. The driver fled the scene, but witnesses saw a black town car with New York plates. The phone slipped from Maya's numb fingers. Catherine had escalated from financial warfare to attempted murder. Detective Martinez was already on her radio, coordinating with Atlanta PD. But Maya wasn't listening. She was staring at a note pinned to the basement wall, written in Catherine's flowing script. Some people never learn their place. Time for a more permanent lesson. David's arms wrapped around her, but Maya felt like she was drowning. Catherine wasn't just trying to destroy their marriage or steal David's company. She was willing to kill an innocent woman dying of cancer just to hurt Maya. Just as they celebrated breaking Catherine's financial scheme, Maya's phone had rung with devastating news about her mother's accident. But witnesses saw a black town car with New York plates fleeing the scene, Catherine's calling card. The war had just turned deadly. They thought Catherine couldn't sink lower. Until she targeted the one person who'd never hurt anyone, lying in a hospital bed fighting for her life. Grady Memorial's trauma unit buzzed with controlled chaos. Maya paced the waiting room like a caged animal while surgeons fought to save her mama's life. The hit and run had shattered her pelvis, fractured 3 ribs, and caused internal bleeding that threatened to steal away the only family Maya had left. Mrs. Chun, Dr. Patterson emerged from surgery still wearing bloodstained scrubs. Your mother's stable, but critical. The next 24 hours will tell us everything. Maya collapsed into David's arms. 18 months of suppressed tears finally breaking free. Her mama, the woman who'd worked double shifts to pay for Maya's school clothes, who'd driven 4 hours each way just to hold her hand during visiting hours at county jail, was clinging to life because of Catherine's twisted games. We're going to get her, David whispered against Maya's hair. I promise you, we're going to make Catherine pay for this. Detective Rodriguez from Atlanta PD approached with information that made Maya's blood boil. We found a car abandoned 3 miles from the hospital, stolen this morning from a rental lot at Hartsfield Airport. But here's the interesting part. The thief knew exactly how to disable the GPS tracking and license plate readers. Professional job, Maya said through gritted teeth. Gets better. Hospital security footage shows a woman matching Catherine Williams' description in the parking garage an hour before the accident. She was watching, waiting for your mother to come outside. When someone attacks your family, how far would you go for justice? What lines wouldn't you cross? The ICU waiting room filled with faces from Maya's past. Neighbors from the old apartment complex, co-workers from the diner where she'd waited tables, teachers who believed in her dreams. They came bearing homemade food, fresh flowers, and the kind of love that money couldn't buy. Mrs. Johnson from next door squeezed Maya's hands. Your mama talked about you every day, baby girl. So proud of how far you'd come, how you'd married that good man and were living your dreams. She never told any of you about. Maya's voice trailed off. About the legal trouble? Honey, we all knew. Violet Washington raised you right. We knew you didn't do whatever they said you did. Mrs. Johnson's weathered face was fierce with loyalty. Some folks got too much money and not enough sense, trying to tear down what they can't understand. David watched the community rally around Maya with wonder in his eyes. His Connecticut upbringing hadn't prepared him for this kind of unconditional support. These people had nothing to gain from defending Maya, but they showed up anyway because that's what family did. I need to tell you something, David said quietly as they sat beside Mama's bedside later that night. Machines beeped steadily, monitoring her vital signs while she slept under the influence of powerful painkillers. What? Maya's voice was hoarse from crying. The night before your arrest, Catherine called me. Said she had information about corporate espionage at my company. She suggested I look into everyone with access to sensitive files, including you. Maya's heart clenched. You suspected me even then? I didn't want to, but she planted seeds of doubt, made me paranoid about everyone. David's voice cracked with shame. I'm so sorry, Maya. I should have trusted my heart instead of her poison. Maya took his hand, feeling the familiar callus on his ring finger from years of wearing his wedding band. She's a master manipulator, David. She played us both. But their moment of reconciliation was interrupted by Maya's phone buzzing with another message. Oops, missed the target. Don't worry, I never make the same mistake twice. Catherine wasn't done. And next time, she wouldn't miss. Catherine Williams had spent her entire life getting what she wanted, until she met someone who'd learned to fight back in places money couldn't reach. The Richmond police precinct buzzed with activity as Maya walked through the front doors like she owned the place. 3 months of running from Catherine's schemes had taught her something valuable. When you've got nothing left to lose, you become dangerous in ways rich people never expect. Detective Martinez, Maya called out, her voice carrying across the squad room. I've got something you need to see. Martinez looked up from her desk, eyebrows raised. Ever since Maya's mother had been released from the hospital, alive but permanently disabled, Maya had been different. Harder, more focused, like grief had burned away everything soft and left behind pure steel. What you got, Mrs. Chun? Maya slapped a thick folder on the detective's desk. Catherine's been sloppy. When you think you're untouchable, you stop covering your tracks properly. David stood behind her, looking like he'd aged 5 years in the past month. The corporate investigation had cleared him of wrongdoing, but the stress was eating him alive. His company's stock had recovered, but their marriage was still healing from wounds that ran deeper than any financial scheme. Bank records, Maya continued, flipping through documents. Catherine's been funding her operation through her family foundation. Turns out, using charity money for personal vendettas is a federal crime. Have you ever watched someone's perfect facade crumble when they thought they were invincible? Share your thoughts below. Martinez whistled low. This is interstate fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy. We're talking serious federal time. Gets better, Maya said, pulling out printed emails. She kept digital copies of everything. Contracts with the actress who impersonated me, payments to the people who forged documents, even communications with the guy who hit my mama. David's jaw clenched. She documented her own crimes. Rich people love paper trails, Maya replied. Makes them feel legitimate. She probably thought she'd never get caught. But Maya's real ace came from an unexpected source, Catherine's own arrogance. The woman had been so convinced of her superiority that she'd kept trophies. Photos of Maya's destroyed life. Screenshots of David's anguish. Even recordings of their private conversations obtained through illegal surveillance. There's more, Maya said, her voice dropping to a whisper. She's been doing this to other people too. 3 other women who married men Catherine considered hers. All of them ended up divorced, discredited, or worse. Martinez leaned forward. Worse how? One ended up in a psychiatric facility after a nervous breakdown. Another died in a car accident that was never properly investigated. Catherine's got a pattern of destroying women she sees as threats. The detective's expression darkened. You're talking about a serial predator with unlimited resources. Was, Maya corrected. Her daddy's foundation is under federal investigation now. Turns out, the IRS doesn't like it when charities fund personal revenge schemes. Her assets are frozen. Her trust fund is tied up in litigation, and her family's disowned her to protect their own reputation. David touched Maya's shoulder gently. How did you find all this? Maya's smile was sharp as broken glass. Turns out, when you've been poor your whole life, you know how to dig through trash and find treasure. Rich people throw away the most interesting things. She'd spent weeks dumpster diving behind Catherine's apartment building, collecting discarded documents. She'd befriended Catherine's housekeeper, who was tired of being treated like furniture. She'd even tracked down the actress who'd impersonated her, a struggling performer who'd been promised legitimate work, but got pulled into criminal conspiracy instead. Catherine Williams made one critical mistake, Maya said, standing up as Martinez began making calls to federal prosecutors. She thought being rich made her smart. But there's a difference between buying intelligence and earning wisdom. As they left the police station, David squeezed Maya's hand. What happens now? Now, Maya looked up at the Virginia sky, thinking about her mama learning to walk again, about their marriage slowly healing, about a future that was theirs to build without Catherine's shadow hanging over it. Now we get to find out who we really are when nobody's trying to destroy us. But as they walked to their car, Maya's phone buzzed with a message from Catherine's lawyer. My client wishes to meet. She has information about your husband's business that might interest federal investigators. Even from behind bars, Catherine wasn't done playing games. She sat in that orange jumpsuit like she was wearing designer silk, proving that some people's arrogance runs deeper than any prison could hold. The Richmond County Jail's visiting room smelled like disinfectant and broken dreams. Maya sat across from Catherine Williams, separated by reinforced glass and a telephone system that made every word feel like evidence. Catherine looked smaller in her jail uniform, but her eyes still burned with the kind of entitlement that prison couldn't wash away. You look tired, Maya, Catherine said through the phone, her voice still carrying that prep school polish. Prison really doesn't suit you. I'm not the one in prison, Maya replied evenly. Catherine's laugh was sharp as broken crystal. Aren't you? You'll always be that poor girl from Atlanta, no matter how much money David throws at you. Prison is just a state of mind, darling. Maya studied Catherine's face, looking for cracks in the perfect mask. 3 weeks in county jail had dulled her hair and hollowed her cheeks, but the woman still carried herself like royalty in exile. Your lawyer said you had information about David's business. Oh, I do. Catherine leaned closer to the glass. Did you know your husband has been under federal investigation for longer than you think? Not for the fraud I framed you for something much more interesting. Maya's stomach twisted. You're lying. Am I? Ask him about the defense contracts. Ask him about the classified technology his company developed. Ask him why the Pentagon has been auditing his books for the past 6 months. Have you ever discovered your partner was keeping secrets to protect you? How'd that make you feel? David told me about the government contracts, Maya said, though uncertainty crept into her voice. Did he tell you about the Chinese investors? The technology transfers that skirted the edge of treason. Catherine's smile was venom wrapped in silk. Your husband's been walking a very thin line, Maya. One wrong step, and he could spend the rest of his life in federal prison. Maya gripped the phone tighter. Why are you telling me this? Because I want to make a deal. Catherine's mask slipped slightly, revealing desperation underneath. I helped the FBI build their case against David, and they reduced my charges. I could be out in 18 months instead of 18 years. The room felt like it was spinning. Maya had fought so hard to clear her name, to save their marriage, to build a life with David. The thought that he might be hiding something that could destroy them both made her chest tight with panic. David's not a traitor, Maya said, but her voice lacked conviction. Isn't he? Or is he just really good at convincing you what you want to hear? Catherine tilted her head like a predator scenting weakness. How well do you really know your husband, Maya? Because I've been digging, and what I found would shock you. Maya stood up abruptly. This conversation is over. Wait, Catherine called out, her composure finally cracking. Maya, please. I know I hurt you, but I'm trying to help now. David's in serious trouble, and if you don't distance yourself from him soon, you'll go down with him. But Maya was already walking away, Catherine's voice echoing behind her through the thick glass. Ask him about Project Nightfall. Ask him why the FBI raided his servers last month. Ask him why he married you just weeks after the investigation started. The visiting room door closed behind Maya with the finality of a coffin lid. But Catherine's words followed her into the parking lot, into the car, into her very bones. Had she fought so hard to save a marriage built on lies? As Maya sat in the prison parking lot, David's car pulled up beside hers. Through the windshield, she could see him talking on his phone, his face tight with stress. When he hung up and walked toward her car, Maya noticed something she'd missed before, the way his eyes didn't quite meet hers, the careful way he chose his words lately, the late-night phone calls he took in his office with the door closed. Catherine might be a monster, but what if she was also telling the truth? Sometimes the person you're fighting to save is the one who's been lying to you all along. And sometimes the truth hurts worse than any betrayal. Maya found the classified documents by accident while looking for tax records in David's home office. They were hidden in a folder marked insurance policies, but the contents made her blood run cold. Project Nightfall, a defense contract involving satellite surveillance technology that could be used for domestic spying. David's company hadn't just developed the software. They'd sold key components to foreign investors, including a shell company with ties to the Chinese military. Jesus, David, Maya whispered, sitting in his leather chair, surrounded by evidence that could send him to federal prison for the rest of his life. What did you do? The front door opened downstairs. David was home early from his emergency board meeting. The one he claimed was about routine corporate restructuring. Maya's hand shook as she tried to organize the documents back into their original order. Maya, David's voice carried up the stairs. You home? She managed to close the files and slide the folder back into its hiding place, just as his footsteps reached the office doorway. When she turned around, David stood there looking like a man carrying the weight of the world. Hey, he said softly, how did the visit with Catherine go? Maya studied her husband's face, looking for signs of the man she'd fallen in love with. She told me some interesting things about Project Nightfall. David went white as fresh snow. For a moment, the mask of confidence he'd worn for months slipped completely, revealing raw terror underneath. Maya, is it true? Her voice was steady, but her heart hammered against her ribs. Did you sell surveillance technology to foreign governments? David closed his eyes, and Maya saw her answer in the defeat that settled over his shoulders like a heavy coat. It wasn't supposed to happen that way, he said quietly. Have you ever learned that the person you trusted most had been lying to protect you from their own mistakes? Tell me everything, Maya demanded. David sank into the chair across from her, looking older than his 36 years. 2 years ago, the company was hemorrhaging money. Bad investments, failed products, competition from bigger tech firms. We were 6 months away from bankruptcy. Maya's chest tightened. The same time you met me. Yes. David's voice cracked. The Chinese investors approached us through intermediaries. They said they wanted to license civilian applications of our satellite software, traffic monitoring, weather tracking, nothing military. But that's not what happened. I found out 6 months later that they'd been reverse engineering our code, building surveillance systems that could track individual citizens, monitor private communications, map military installations. David's hands clenched into fists. By then it was too late. They had everything. Maya felt like she was drowning in quicksand. So you married me to what? Have a good character witness when this all came out? No. David's voice was fierce with emotion. Maya, you have to believe me. Meeting you, falling in love with you, that was real. That was the only real thing in my life during that nightmare. Then why didn't you tell me? Because I was trying to fix it. I've been working with federal investigators for 8 months, feeding them information about the Chinese operation. Everything I did was to protect you, to keep you out of it. Maya stared at her husband, trying to reconcile the man she'd loved with the one sitting before her. The FBI raid on your servers? Controlled. We gave them copies of everything to help build the case against the real criminals. David leaned forward desperately. Maya, I made mistakes, but I'm trying to make them right. By lying to me for 2 years. By keeping you safe. If Catherine hadn't started her campaign against us, you never would have known. You could have lived your whole life without being touched by this mess. But Maya was already shaking her head. That's not your choice to make, David. We're supposed to be partners. The office fell silent except for the ticking of David's grandfather clock. Outside, the sun was setting over Richmond, painting their world in shades of gold and crimson. What happens now? Maya asked. The FBI thinks they can make a deal, David said quietly. Full cooperation in exchange for reduced charges. I might serve 2 years instead of 20. Maya closed her eyes, feeling the weight of decisions that would shape the rest of their lives. Catherine had been right about one thing. David's secrets ran deeper than either of them had imagined. But unlike Catherine's twisted games, David's lies had been born from love, not hatred. The question was whether that made any difference at all. She'd spent 18 months in jail for crimes she didn't commit, only to learn her husband had been committing real ones the entire time they'd been married. Maya sat in her mama's hospital room, watching the woman who'd raised her slowly regain strength after Catherine's brutal attack. Physical therapy was helping Mama walk again, but the emotional scars ran deeper than broken bones. Both women had learned that loving the wrong person could cost you everything. You're thinking too loud, baby girl, Mama said from her bed, where she was working on hand exercises prescribed by her therapist. How do you know when love isn't enough? Maya asked. Mama set down her stress ball and gave Maya the look that had guided her through 30 years of life's hardest decisions. When staying hurts more than leaving. But he did it to protect me. Did he? Or did he do it to protect himself from having to face the truth? Mama's voice was gentle but firm. There's a difference between protecting someone and controlling the story they get to hear. Maya thought about David's revelation 3 days ago. How he kept her in the dark about federal investigations, Chinese spying, and the real reason their company had survived financial collapse. He claimed it was love, but it felt more like being treated like a child who couldn't handle adult problems. I served 18 months in jail, Mama. 18 months for crimes I didn't commit. And the whole time, my husband was actually guilty of different crimes he never told me about. That's a heavy burden, Mama acknowledged. But the question isn't what he did. It's what you can live with going forward. Have you ever had to choose between loving someone and loving yourself? Share your story below. Maya's phone buzzed with a text from David. Federal sentencing hearing is tomorrow. Will you be there? She stared at the message, her thumb hovering over the keyboard. For 18 months, she'd dreamed of David fighting for her, believing in her innocence, standing by her side. Now he was the one facing prison, and she wasn't sure she could do the same for him. You know what the hardest part is? Maya said to her mother, I understand why he did it. The lying, the hiding, the trying to handle everything alone. When you love someone, you want to protect them from your mistakes. But protection built on lies isn't protection at all, Mama replied. It's just delayed pain with interest. Maya thought about Catherine, rotting in county jail, destroyed by her own obsession with controlling other people's lives. Then she thought about David, who'd made different choices but similar mistakes, deciding what truths other people could handle. I forgave Catherine for framing me, Maya said slowly. Not because she deserved it, but because carrying that anger was destroying me. But David I actually loved. And somehow that makes his betrayal cut deeper. Mama reached for Maya's hand with fingers that were growing stronger every day. Forgiveness isn't the same as staying, baby girl. You can forgive someone and still choose to walk away. The afternoon sun streamed through the hospital window, casting long shadows across the floor. Maya thought about the life she'd built with David. The mansion in Richmond, the charity work, the dreams of children and growing old together. All of it built on foundations that were crumbling under the weight of secrets. What would you do? Maya asked. Mama smiled with the wisdom of someone who'd survived 40 years of loving, imperfect people. I'd ask myself one question. If you knew then what you know now, would you still choose him? Maya closed her eyes, searching her heart for an answer that felt true. When she opened them again, she knew what she had to do. But first, she had one more conversation to have. The kind that would either save their marriage or end it forever. Sometimes you have to lose everything to discover what's really worth saving. And sometimes what's worth saving isn't what you thought it would be. The federal courthouse in Richmond looked like a temple to justice, all marble columns and stern-faced statues. Maya climbed the steps in a simple black dress, her mama's words echoing in her mind. If you knew then what you know now, would you still choose him? Inside the courtroom, David sat at the defendant's table in a navy suit that had once made her weak in the knees. Now it just looked like expensive armor for a man who'd run out of ways to protect himself. He turned when she entered, and the hope in his eyes nearly broke her heart. "All rise," the bailiff announced. The Honorable Judge Patricia Monroe presiding. Maya found a seat in the gallery, close enough to see David, but far enough to maintain the distance she needed. She'd made her decision, but she wanted to hear what he'd say when everything was on the line. Federal Prosecutor Janet Williams, no relation to Catherine, thankfully, stood to address the court. "Your Honor, Mr. Chun has cooperated fully with our investigation into foreign technology transfers. His information led to the indictment of 12 individuals and the recovery of classified materials." David's lawyer, a sharp woman in her 50s, presented the case for leniency. "My client made mistakes, but he's worked tirelessly to correct them. He's agreed to surrender his security clearance, divest from government contracts, and serve as a witness in ongoing prosecutions." Judge Monroe looked at David over her reading glasses. "Mr. Chun, you may address the court." David stood slowly, and Maya could see his hands trembling. "Your Honor, I stand before you having betrayed the trust of my country, my investors, and my wife. I thought I could fix my mistakes in private, but I understand now that some choices affect more than just the person making them." His voice was steady, but Maya caught the slight crack when he mentioned her. "I made a series of decisions that put national security at risk. I compounded those mistakes by hiding them from the people I claim to love. I don't ask for forgiveness. I ask for the chance to spend whatever time I have left making amends." Have you ever had to watch someone you loved face the consequences of choices that hurt you both? Judge Monroe was silent for a long moment. "Mr. Chun, your cooperation has been valuable, and your remorse appears genuine. However, the severity of your actions cannot be overlooked. I sentence you to 3 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years of supervised probation." Maya felt the air leave her lungs. 3 years. Not the 20 David had feared, but not the suspended sentence she'd secretly hoped for either. As the courtroom cleared, David turned to find her. Maya stood and walked toward the defense table, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Maya," he whispered, "thank you for coming." "I needed to hear it," she said quietly. "All of it. The truth, finally." David's eyes filled with tears he was too proud to let fall. "I love you. That was never a lie." Maya reached in her purse and pulled out an envelope. "I know, and I love you too, but love isn't enough anymore." David's face crumpled as he recognized what she was handing him. Divorce papers filed that morning. "I can't do this, David. I can't spend the next 3 years wondering what else you haven't told me. I can't build a life with someone who thinks protecting me means lying to me." "Maya, please." "I forgive you," she said, and meant it. "But forgiving you doesn't mean staying with you." As federal marshals led David away in handcuffs, Maya walked out of the courthouse and into the Virginia sunshine. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mama. "How do you feel, baby girl?" Maya typed back, "Free." For the first time in 2 years, she felt like herself again. Not David's wife, not Catherine's victim, not a character in someone else's story. Just Maya Chun, soon to be Maya Washington again, a woman who'd survived betrayal, imprisonment, and attempted murder to discover something precious. She could trust herself, and that, she realized, was where real love had to begin.